What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Week 14 edition of the Pro Football Focus Show here on RotoGrinders. I am Brit Devine, coming to you live from location from Mr. Walt Disney World down here in Florida in my hotel room. But I will not miss this show because I love doing it with my man Ian. Ian, what's up, dude?
What is going on, Britt? Yeah, fun Thursday night game. I was actually at the bar in the first half with a bunch of PFF guys, and we were like, all right, well, this sucks. Let's go home. Nothing's going to happen here.
Good game.
No, I watched the rest of it at my house. Like, don't get me wrong, but I was like, man, I know it's the Vikings, so maybe I shouldn't have ever assumed that, things were gone. But hey, fun one. And, hopefully we get some injury clarification today, Britt, because we were talking before the show. And last week, we came here with dozens of players we felt good about. Not quite as high of a number this week, but we still got some good ones.
Yeah, and I'm gonna petition the NFL to put every running back in a shoulder harness for the rest of the season, because that seems to multiply your performance, as at least it does for Mr. Dalvin Cook. But apologies to those who like to watch this live and we do the screen share. Because I'm away from home, I didn't want to risk the bandwidth on the Wi-Fi. So if you want to check out Ian's article, we're still going to go over it here. But if you want to check it out, you do have to go over to profootballfocus.com and read it for free, just like every week over there. But Ian, let's jump into it. Last week, like you said, we nailed a lot of the plays on this show. And I know personally, my teams did really good across the industry. This week, it's like we're waiting on a couple of injuries, but like we had 4,000 running backs we wanted to use this week. This week, there's maybe like 3. And it might be even lower if injuries break a certain way. But what can we glean, at least on the offenses, in terms of explosive play rate? This is in your article here over on Pro Football Focus. Any big runs, any big passes that might be a little bit unexpected this week?
Yeah, and just for those unfamiliar with kind of the methodology, every time we talk about mismatches, like, oh, we have the number 2 rushing offense versus number 31 rushing defense. That's a great matchup. I just combine those stats so we have more one-way metrics and we don't need to kind of talk in circles quite as often. So with that in mind, looking at the explosive plays, really seeing the Raiders, Browns, Saints, and 49ers sticking out as offenses that could be set up particularly well in the air. And, the 49ers one in particular, it looks like Deebo Samuel is going to again be out. I know Brandon Ayuk burnt a lot of people last week, but also low-key, Chidobe Awuzie, who's been a top 10 cornerback for PFF all year, has not practiced at all this week with a foot injury. So if you take away Chidobe, they're probably going to be shadowing Ayuk with Eli Apple, one of, he ranks outside of PFF's top 90 corners. So that really is one of the bigger differences that you'll see around the league, going from a number 1 corner to a number 2. I like the bounce back potential for Ayuk this week. Some passing games not set up quite as well, which I don't think any of them are too big of surprises. Giants, Texans, Falcons, Panthers, and the Chiefs. But as we know, Britt, they're playing the Raiders. And if there's one thing that can get this offense right, it's apparently the Raiders.
Yeah, the Raiders, they even tried, I read a couple articles this week. They even tried the too high safety or whatever's giving Mahomes all the problems, but he was still able to dice up the Raiders. When they tried that, every other team seems to keep Mahomes in check. But that'll be a fun game because we have a couple of flop lag, Foster Moreau, maybe him in a tournament this week.
I like that call too.
After he disappointed everyone last week here. Going down just a little bit farther in your article, let's talk about pace. Which games are expected to see the most snaps? Which games might be a little bit lower in play volume, which is something you might want to pay attention to, at least in terms of fantasy performances.
Yeah, in my article, I have to get quirky. It's like my last one of the week. So it's just whatever comes to mind, I'll throw it out there. So I always call it the fastest pace matchup of the week. The sponsored Ricky Bobby, I want to go fast, highest projected matchup. And that one actually waits until Monday night, Rams at the Cardinals. So that'll be a fun one I look forward to. But on the main slate, Bills at Buccaneers, another great game, man. Like, when you look at that, when you have these good quarterbacks, you go a little faster. All of a sudden, those are the games that look so great on paper. Also seeing Raiders and Chiefs popping, and a little bit lesser Giants and Chargers as some of the top matchups. The slower ones, we got Lions and Broncos, Ravens and Browns, and also 49ers and Bengals. So I guess that would be like my hesitancy with that Bengals 49ers game, because I get it. There's Jamar Chase, on the other side, who at some point you'd like to think is going to cash in on one of these big plays. That paid me last week, Brit. That was one of my biggest, wide receivers I was really bringing to everyone, to watch him go from having a 70-yard touchdown pass in his hands to literally giving it away to the defender. I was yelling some not so nice words at the TV after that one. So just something to keep in mind in these games. I'm not saying you can't take pieces from any of these slower paced matchups, but if you're trying to get that game stack, looking for like a 35-38 finish, maybe, lay off a little bit on these slower pace matchups.
Yeah, those sheeshes are great. My question for you on the 49ers Bengals, do you think, Joe Mixon didn't really get it going last week, and who's going to actually run the ball for the 49ers this week? Doesn't matter. We will find out. Do running backs actually matter? Do you think, I guess with Debo out, maybe they still try to run a lot here? That's the one game I like Burrow and some of those passing pieces in tournaments this week. So that's the one where I might try to go against it. And on the flip side, that Buffalo-Tampa Bay game, two teams who don't want to run the ball at all, they're going to want to chuck the ball. Each team wants to pass 45 plus times a game, and everyone's going to be taking part in that for DFS this week. All right, keep going down a little bit more. We like to talk pressure rate. Good for your quarterbacks. They get a clean pocket. Good for defenses if they're allowed to get pressure on the quarterback. What quarterbacks look like they're going to be clean, and what quarterbacks might be a little bit dirty at the end of the day?
All day to throw, looking like Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, and Tom Brady. Crazy stat I found this week with Brady. I mean, look, we know they have the big play potential, but credit to the Bills. This is number one defense in the league, and EPA allowed per pass play. Now they're really going to be tested for the first time without Tre'Davious White in that secondary. But even if a defense like the Bills can maybe take away some of those big plays, I mean, Brady can just march them up and down the field. And since he has joined Tampa Bay, including playoffs, 60 red zone passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. The dude is just, the GOAT for a reason, and apparently the first guy to ever take down Father Time. But with some of these other ones, I mean, don't underestimate the Cowboys just kind of taking this Washington defense to the woodshed. It's been a while since we've seen the Cowboys have a healthy Tyron Smith, have healthy CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup. And now with both Zeke and Tony Pollard banged up, we already kind of saw last week that the Cowboys, when they have these banged up running backs, they're more willing to keep throwing the ball throughout the game. And as we'll talk about a little more with the GPP wide receivers, man, we did actually see an alignment change last week with CeeDee Lamb playing the heavy majority of his snaps in the slot for the first time all season. It doesn't take many game logs to go through the Washington football team and see that they have really just been killed by slot receivers all year. So very interested in that Cowboys passing attack this week, but some offenses that could be a little bit more overwhelmed by pressure. Ryan Tannehill and the Titans, hopefully he can stay upright long enough to get Julio Jones going. Beyond that, I don't know. And then also it's looking like Mike Glennon for the Giants and Russell Wilson for the Seahawks.
You'll hear about that Cowboys game in the bets of the week. That is my favorite one. We'll discuss which side and why in just a little bit. All right, let's talk yards before contact. It's good for running backs. Dalvin Cook, right? Running wild all over the place last night. It's easy to get a lot of yards when nobody's able to touch your running back. What looks good this week, because running back is definitely a very weak position. Wide receiver isn't that great. Tight end's not that great, but running back is definitely lacking this week in terms of elite plays at a reasonable salary.
Yeah, best one of the week is Clyde Edwards-Helaire and the Kansas City Chiefs. I would feel better about them if we had seen them come out of that bye and really give the backfield back over to CEH. But the problem is Darrell Williams is still awfully involved, and he's the one getting a lot of those fantasy-friendly receptions. But, for Clyde to really reach his ceiling in this offense, he needs to be in a game where they're going to be playing with a bunch of positive game script against the run D that they can run over, and he is checking those boxes in this week, so might not be a bad tournament play. Also seeing the Ravens really pop in against against the Browns. I mean, I know Lamar threw 4 picks last time they faced, but they also were able to really instill their will on the ground for the majority of that game. Devontae Freeman has taken over this backfield, man. It was looking like when Latavius came back, his first week, he wasn't that involved. And then we saw his snaps and touches really climb. Then they came back down last week. So Freeman, low key, is, especially in season long, he's someone that was becoming easier and easier to rank inside your top 15, 16 running backs. And I think he's going a little bit under the radar this week. So if you want to maybe stack Devontae Freeman with that Ravens D, banking on Baker Mayfield, doing Baker Mayfield things, I don't think that's the worst move either. Some rushing attacks that aren't set up quite so well. 49ers really could struggle. Houston, but who gives a shit about them, obviously. With the 49ers, I would be it looked like earlier in the week that Jeff Wilson could be out in addition. So if it was only Hasty, I could get behind it, but we're probably going to see some combination of Wilson, Hasty, even Kyle Juszczyk, and that's if Debo isn't healthy enough to return. So more of a stay away from me with the 49ers, given that we don't have one featured running back and the matchup isn't all that great. Now for the Bengals, it's a little bit different where their matchup isn't good, but it's Joe Mixon. Even though he's had the illness, we know he's going to get fed more than just about anyone. And with Burrow playing through the pinky injury, it would make sense to me if they want to further lean on Mixon in that ground game.
All right, let's go to EPA per play to close it out here. Any underdogs that are doing a little bit better on the EPA per play than Vegas is telling us, at least in terms of odds of the game?
Just one. Again, last week, the only one was the Broncos. And damn it, Teddy, if he could have been even competent, I think they could have covered that 9.5 without too much of a problem. But this week, the only one is the Buffalo Bills at plus 3.5. So that's kind of thing, man. I think if the best version of Josh Allen shows up, I think they can take down the Buccaneers for sure, because you look at what they've been able to do this year on defense, and even with Tre'Davious White being out, they've consistently been one of the best defenses at getting after the quarterback. So yeah, maybe Tampa Bay, they decided to take, the game plan out of the Colts, out of the Patriots, and they just run Leonard Fournette 35 times up the middle and try to instill their will. But the thing is, you can do that when the Bills aren't really scoring that much in their own right. But all of a sudden, if we get the Superman version of Josh Allen out there putting up 30 points, that's where I'll be interested to see if Tampa Bay is able of keeping up just as well. So 3.5 just seems like maybe it's a point or two, a little bit too high. I know betting against Brady can be rough, but one of these where I think the Bills could cover in a losing effort.
All right, that's going to check it out. Again, apologies for no screen share while I am on vacation this week. For those of you watching live or on replay, you will have to go over to profootballfocus.com and check out Ian's article. It is available for free like it has been all season if you want to get all the deets on all of the information that he's posting there. All right, let's jump into some of the bets of the week. And Ian, after we both started off the season pretty horribly, we have clawed our way back to respectability, and now me and you are basically neck and neck to close out the season here. So I'm putting some extra time into these picks. Full disclosure, I have not bet these yet because I've been on vacation all week. When I get home, I'm going Sunday morning, and I'm hoping these lines are still good. Because my absolute favorite one of the week is no doubt the Cowboys at -4.5. This should be 7 in my opinion, because the Redskin or the Washington football team, excuse me. Jerry Jones did say he does like the Washington football team today, so we'll see if that accounts for anything. But Washington's just not good. Their defense is absolutely horrible, and you can pass all over them. And like you said at the beginning, we have healthy CeeDee Lamb, healthy Amari Cooper, healthy Michael Gallup, healthy Dalton Schultz, healthy Dak Prescott. Who needs a crusty Zeke and an injured Tony Pollard to try to run the ball this week? Because you can't really run on Washington basically all season. This is going to be the Dak offense, and that's the explosive Cowboys offense we like. Their defense is really good now too. I think the Cowboys are going to absolutely trounce Washington this week, and 4.5 seems way, way, way too low in my book. This is my best bet of the week. Full disclosure, my bet last week was the 49ers against Russell Wilson. Unfortunately for me, Russell Wilson is back, and we'll talk about him in just a little bit and maybe some tournament plays, but that accurate Russell Wilson is back. So that one didn't work out, but I'm going on the Cowboys pretty hard this week.
I don't have an analytical reason to disagree with you on anything you said about the Cowboys. And on defense, man, too, I think they're getting Randy Gregory back this week. And if you look at Gregory, Lawrence, and Parsons together, I actually think my favorite Super Bowl long shot bet right now is the Cowboys. They were plus 1,200 the last time I saw them, because we know the offense is good enough to compete with anyone. And I think what you need to get out of the NFC based on Brady and Rodgers. Now, Kyler Murray might be Kyler Murray and be Superman. There are a lot of good teams here, but you need to have enough guys in the front seven to get that high level of pressure. I think the Cowboys at full health have that. I just wish Mike McCarthy didn't go out there and say like, yeah, we're going to win this one. So that's the only thing that I'm not really liking about that, but good pick there. Yeah, I like the Ravens and Browns under 43. We've seen both these offenses sputter. Before the Browns bye week, they were the only team in the league with 6 games of 14 or fewer points since September ended. Lamar Jackson really hasn't been able to get going against the blitz for the better part of the season, particularly during these past 3-4 weeks of down play. So I think the Browns defense is actually really good. I think the Ravens defense, while they're banged up, is at least still good enough and blitz happy enough to give Baker all sorts of problems. So Ravens, Browns under 43. Gonna ride with my mismatch manifesto and take Buffalo plus 3.5. The level of confidence isn't super high on that. And then finally, I do like Cincy at plus 1.5. I don't think they deserve to be a home dog against a banged up version of the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, when I looked right before the show, the Bengals are on my list too at +2. It just seems like it's like it should be flipped the other way at home, right? Because the 49, right. Who do they have? They're down Debo, they're down all their running backs. I don't think Mitchell's going to play. We're waiting on injury news. I keep scouring Twitter during the show here. Let's see here. There is a 49ers one, but it doesn't say anything about Mitchell. So we'll have to see how that goes. I just don't, and Jimmy Garoppolo is not good. So the Bengals are better. They're a better quarterback, better wide receiver, better running back. Maybe not a better tight end, but I think they're significantly better on offense all the way around. And you're giving them points at home. That seems like a mismatch line to me. So for sure, I like that one. I'm on the opposite side of you on that Bills game. Unfortunately, I like the Bucks. It didn't make my list of 3 here, but that was basically the 4th one on my list. So I like the Bucks plus 3.5. So we'll duke it out in that one. We'll see who comes out ahead on that.
You've gotten all these head-to-heads this year too. I feel
don't bet it, Ian. Don't bet it. And then the other one I have on my list for the show today is the Cardinals at 2.5. Kyler Murray is that dude, and the Rams have not been playing great. They beat up on Jacksonville. Problem solved? I don't think so. We're gonna have to see if the Rams can hang. The Cardinals getting just 2.5 at home. To me, with a healthy Kyler Murray, with a healthy Deion, that offense is clicking. This should be like 4.5 or 5. Just Vegas is never going to give them that big of a spread because I think they like the Rams and McVay too much. And McVay, he's a good coach, but doesn't manage games very well. And Cliff has sort of turned that around this year and become a very good coach, in my opinion. So I'm going to take the Cardinals minus 2.5, but undoubtedly the Cowboys 4.5. I'm with you on the Bengals. I got the Cardinals, and we'll duke it out. Maybe I'll put the Buccaneers on here so I can have some extra play in our head-to-heads here. But that is another one that I like. All right, so that's going to wrap up the sports betting part of the show. If you want to get some of our fantasy takes for DFS this week, hang on just a second, because those are coming right after I tell you about Jock Market. Stop throwing your money away and check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange. You can buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money. You can check them out. You get promo code Grinders, gets you a 100% deposit bonus up to $50. So you would deposit 50, use promo code Grinders, you get yourself $100. So you've got your $100 in your account. Check this out. If you are a first-time player on Jock Market, they give you a risk-free $100 in your first market guarantee. So what that allows you to do is get a little risky with your $100, because if you lose it, they will refund you. Don't take Tom Brady to be the top quarterback of the week. Don't take Austin Eckler, right? Those are low risk, low return, because you do have the high risk, high return option available to you since it is risk free. Maybe you take a Mike Williams to be the highest scoring wide receiver, someone down a little bit lower on the chart, and that will really boost up your winnings on Jock Market. Use promo code Grinders, get yourself a 100% deposit bonus. All right, let's run over to the DFS landscape this week. And I'll start at quarterback with you, Ian, and you've got it down here too, because I was going to ask you, which cheap quarterback is it going to be? Is it going to be the one who got benched 2 weeks ago and Cam Newton, or is it going to be the quarterback with a bum finger that can't throw who chucked 4 interceptions last week and Taysom Hill? Hill's 5,600, Cam's 54. Break down everything that's going on between these two, because I feel like one of these is going to be a pretty bad play. The chance of failure of one of these guys, I think, is reasonably high. And like, it's just very tough for me to decide between these two. They look like the two clear plays unless you're really spending up. And because we don't have all this value this week, I think we will be going cheap with one of these running quarterbacks. This is a very tough decision. Who do you got?
I mean, all the top kind of quarterbacks, like unless you can get all the way up to Mahomes at 8K, but even then, like we've seen that floor basically every game except against the Raiders over the past like 6-7 weeks. Josh is against the Buccaneers, Brady against the Bills, Lamar against the Browns, Herbert could be
Brady
down.
Brady and Dak would be the two I think if I was spending, I feel more comfortable with.
I hear you, but even Dak's on the road against a division team. So it's not like there's not a higher price quarterback like that checks every single box. I get it. Brady and Dak are fine. You know, if money ceased to exist, I would certainly play them over Taysom and Cam. But I just think that's amount of salary that we can save at QB. And to your point, in a week where we don't really have a ton of volume, like I don't want those 3K Chargers receivers, even if Keenan and Mike are out of the picture. So I think this is where we got to do it. I lean Taysom because if there is a matchup where you don't literally need to throw the football, it's probably against the Jets, man. The league's single worst defense in fantasy points per game, allowed to RBs. And that's basically what Taysom is at this point. So the guy's 5 for 5 and QB1 finishes as a starter. I know like got a lot of help from that Deontay Harris yak play last week. But again, the matchup for him is good enough. He's been practicing in full all week. And getting Alvin Kamara back like is huge, man. Like I don't think it's really going to hurt Taysom's rushing upside because they're down Mark Ingram and Ty Montgomery. Like Taysom and Kamara should both get the amount of rushes they need to really meet fantasy value. And it also just gives him a much needed playmaker in the passing game. Meanwhile, Cam lost that much needed playmaker in the passing game in Christian McCaffrey. The matchup is more than winnable. I mean, when you look at that Panthers game, that just horrific game before their bye, the big issue was that Cam and Walker were pressured on 50% of their combined dropbacks. Atlanta is PFF's single lowest graded team in pass rushing grade. So I see the argument for both, man. I just lean Taysom because at least with Taysom, he's going to be out there. Like we've heard nothing to suggest from Sean Payton that it could, be going back to Trevor Siemian anytime soon. With Cam, we have seen him benched. We have seen Matt Rule again bring up the point that PJ Walker could be in there for a couple snaps. I know last time he said that Walker didn't play at all, but I would appreciate if Rule could stop bringing up that as a possibility regardless. So I think Taysom is on the better team, the slightly better matchup and the better coached offense. Give me Taysom. Famous last words.
I do want to note, I think I figured out why the Bengals were 2-point underdogs. Debo, it looks like Debo's going to be back, but no Elijah Mitchell for the 49ers. That just sort of crossed. So
Debo practiced today?
He made it back at practice. He was geeked to be back was the exact quote on that. So I would expect Debo to end up making it here. So that would probably lower. I know we talked about Ayuk, but with no, like Debo's he's the de facto RB1 probably for them.
Yeah, Ayuk is off the table in cash games then, but I think he's now like a better tournament play because we've seen, I mean, if you look at Debo's handful of last games, once they have gotten Ayuk like involved again as their basically wide receiver one, like look at Debo, man, his last 3 games, 5 targets, 2 targets, 4 targets. Like he didn't finish with under 8 targets in a game from week 1 to week 9. In his last 3 games, he had 11 total targets. So they're getting him in those games. Let's see, 19 rush attempts. So he's getting fed, but it is a little, I don't know if he's going to be averaging 8 yards per carry or whatever it's been every week moving forward. So that's interesting. I really wouldn't be too high on Debo here, but I think the potential now to leverage off people that could be to Ayuk is even more appealing.
All right, quarterback in tournaments. So we've got Cam and Taysom. I think you can probably play both in tournaments as well, either with one target or probably just alone, in my opinion. If you're going to play Taysom, maybe you pair him with Kamara and just try to get all the points. But I don't know. I think those are almost best left off just running the quarterbacks by themselves. The guy I'm looking at is probably Russ Wilson. He was back. He was horribly inaccurate for a couple of weeks. He was 31 of 37 last week. That's the Russell Wilson we know. He's going to be reasonably low owned. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett look like they're going to be reasonably low owned. That is a very juicy way against the Texans. Even Pete Carroll knows you can't run with Alex Collins and the 14-time injured Rashad Penny anymore. Like you got to let Russ do what he has to do, especially if you want any hopes of him maybe sticking around in Seattle. In my opinion, you got to let him throw the ball in the air. So I like Russ quite a bit. The other guy's Joe Burrow, just because I do think he has the weapons and the ability to maybe score some points. And I still think the 49ers will be able to score some points too. So that is the one game, despite both teams wanting to run the ball, I am willing to take a couple of shots on Joe Burrow.
Yeah, the two tournament QBs I'm leaning towards are pretty much at the top, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. I get it. Like, we wouldn't really try to get up to them as cash game players. But with Lamar in particular, like he hasn't scored a rushing touchdown since week 2. I know the Browns defense is good, but you only need to go back to week 10 when they gave up 45 points to the Patriots to see like they can be had in the right environment. And we know that both these guys, and especially Lamar with that rushing floor, have weekly overall QB1 upside. So I feel like people have kind of been lulled to sleep by both of their respective down stretches. But, Britt, like I don't expect Lamar and Mahomes to just be these like average quarterbacks for the rest of their career that they've been over the past month. We'll see the breakout come at some point, and hey, could happen this week.
If you are watching this live or on replay on YouTube, we do appreciate you. Please click that like button if you like the information Ian and I give to you each and every week here. If you want alerts to everything that we do here on RotoGrinders, you can subscribe on our YouTube feed. And if you want to get access to everything delivered right to your phone, you can subscribe to the RotoGrinders Daily Fantasy Football podcast feed. And while you're hey, go check out Ian over on Pro Football Focus feed as well. One of the few things I listen to outside of the stuff here on RotoGrinders every week. All right, let's go to running backs and just a position I'm not really thrilled on because the guys I want to use are expensive, and we've been spoiled with all these 5 to 6K workhorse running backs for a while. So the one that really fits in that mode this week would be Josh Jacobs. We've got no Kenyon Drake, Jalen Richard's out on the COVID list, and we've got Mr. 9 targets from last week, Josh Jacobs, getting fully involved in the passing game, which has always been his Achilles heel. That's why we've never really trusted him in fantasy because he's never got that pass game work, and now he seems to be involved in it here. You got to expect him to get, 15 to 20 rushes in even a reasonably close game. And if the Chiefs blow him out, that's just more PPR work for him on dump offs, which is great as well. Really hard to not like him this week. And he needs to stay in the NFL for a long time, Ian, based on some of the reports I saw on Twitter this week. So he needs to have himself a very nice game this week to continue to make quite a bit of money for a long time. So I like Mr. Josh Jacobs. The other guy, I guess we can try to hash this out. Is it Austin Eckler without, I'm not expecting Keenan Allen to play. I think the way it's trending, I think Mike Williams will probably end up suiting up as long as he continues to test negative for COVID. Mm-hmm. But we've got Eckler who should maybe, all these little Keenan Allen dump offs and mid-tier routes, they're sort of in the Austin Eckler wheelhouse. He'll probably see a bump in targets. So if you do, I know like I do Prize Picks. I love his receiving prop is like at 40 yards or something like that. Go hit the over on that for Eckler. But who would you rather put your hard-earned, not hard-earned, your fake Draftkings dollars on? 8,300 of them on Austin Eckler this week. Or do you want to put 7,900 on them on Alvin Kamara because you can really only get one of them this week?
If I can get up, I think it's to Eckler. Like it's just, okay, Kamara has the slightly better matchup, but it's not like a home spot against the Giants is anything that's bad. Having Justin Herbert instead of Taysom Hill, would lead you to believe that he will be used more in the pass game. To your point about Keenan, that would be the absolute clincher. So Eckler, I think, is the overall RB1 the week, and season long, just pure ranking, not even looking at it from a DFS perspective. So only $400 more. I am happy to get up to Eckler if at all possible. I'm cool with Josh Jacobs too, man. I think you put it perfectly, and certainly definitely needs to get his money for some of those future bills he'll have ringing up. And then maybe, Antonio Gibson at 6K. But if J.D. McKissic is going to be back, that could be problematic in a game that the Cowboys could jump out on. It's been great seeing Gibson's usage over the past few weeks, but that has coincided with not only McKissic being out, but also extremely positive game script that, let's face it, Washington wasn't experiencing this year. Dwayne McFarland on our podcast had I might butcher the stat, but it was something incredible where before Washington's bye, they had only led by 4+ points for 3% of their total minutes. That really was the issue with Gibson. And we were seeing that again and again and again, where McKissic would end up being the guy in these fantasy friendly, comeback game scripts. So if McKissic's out, then Gibson is egregiously underpriced. He should be a top 5, top 6 projected back. If McKissic is in though, that would be where I would be probably getting away from Gibson. And yeah.
I want to just bring some news that just popped into this. It relates to Mike Boone, which isn't someone we're using in fantasy, but he's in the COVID-19 protocols there for Denver. So keep an eye over the weekend, or maybe even later today, if there's any close contacts between Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams. That is something that could really break us, give us some of the value we need.
Flip it on its head.
Yeah, it looks like Melvin Gordon's probably going to play too, at least in terms of his injury. But do keep your eye on any news for that as it goes through later today and through the weekend. All right, tournaments. You're digging deep in tournaments this week, Ian, in my opinion, because I don't know. I really couldn't come up with anybody, because the guys that aren't popular are guys like Saquon. You've got him down here, right? Who just hasn't been. He's been hurt too much. Now, we will get a bajillion dump offs from Mike Lennon this week. Again, go hammer the I said this last week. It turned out good. Whatever if Saquon's prop is in 4.5 or 5 receptions, go hammer the over on that in your sports book, because he's going to get 5 to 6 receptions in this game, almost guaranteed. But he's been pretty horrible, right? And then we're looking at Chuba Hubbard, and we're looking at Dante Foreman, and these guys, they're just not the guys you really want to click on in tournaments. But where else are you really
That's why we should
be feeling good, man. You're gonna go, right?
Yeah, well, allow me to retort before you just say we don't want to click on them. So with Saquon this week, if we just, and I think this would be actually a decent practice to kind of build your lineup start the week, but just cover up the names. You don't even know it's Saquon, but we have a 6K running back that is a complete bell cow facing a Chargers defense that we've talked about all year. Even when they face teams like the Browns, like the Ravens, that are like run first offenses, they really don't change what they're doing. Like, they allow teams to run on them. So the matchup's good, the price is good, and the usage remains great. Like, it's, when we were happy with Devontae Booker during Saquon's absence, it wasn't like he was necessarily crushing it either. But when you're getting potentially 20 plus carries, and to your point, 5 to 10 to who knows how many targets, depending on the game script, I mean, that's what we want in a 6K running back. But because it's Saquon Barkley, who, let's face it, man, if you watch these games over the past 2 weeks, like, you still do see him ripping off some chunk plays here and there, and, resembling his former self. Not saying he is 2018, 2019 Saquon these days, but I just think that everything lines up for Saquon this week, except for the fact that it's Saquon Barkley. So I'm fine risking that in tournaments. With Chuba, everyone's so worried about Amir Abdullah, which, fair. There's a reason why I wasn't, hyping up Chuba as a super go get him waiver claim over the past 2 weeks. But if you go back and look at the last time that we had Chuba as a starter and Amir Abdullah was on the team, then yes, Abdullah stole away some of the targets, but that didn't stop Chuba from having 24 carries and 2 targets himself against this very same Falcons defense. So this, you look forward, they got the Bills in week 15, the Buccaneers in week 16. Like, I think there will be Abdullah weeks moving forward where Chuba is more or less the 1B back. But if there was going to be a spot for him to get 20 or more carries, 3 to 5 targets, it would be at home against a Falcons defense that we know can be had. And then also just with Deontay Foreman, Jerry McNichols is likely back. He's been practicing in full all week, after dealing with that concussion. So I think Dontrell Hilliard's it's either going to be split up in the pass down work, or Hilliard's going to take a step back. Like, everyone's acting like Hilliard is potentially this play. Like, McNichols has been Derrick Henry's backup for the last 2 years. Hilliard got signed to the team like a couple months ago. So I think McNichols will be back to being the pass down back. Then we have Deontay Foreman working as the lead early down back against a Jaguars defense that, we're used to seeing Derrick Henry just rush for 2 bills against. Not saying Foreman is Derrick Henry, but again, when we can get these running backs implied for flirting with 20 plus touches in matchups where the matchups aren't scary and the ownership is not them, sign me up, Brit.
All right, let's get to some wide receivers this week. And I'm just going back to the well on Chris Godwin. His price, he should be, his price is steadily rising. He's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 highest priced wide receiver on DraftKings now, but it's still just 6,100. Dude had 17 targets last week, was the most popular receiver. Scores 33 DraftKings points, and his price goes up $500. I think he's still pretty reasonable. And I guess we got to see, now that Tre'Davious White's out, can you actually attack Buffalo on the outside? because Godwin on the inside of the field, that's where you really can dice it up against Buffalo. I still think that should be a main focus. I think Godwin is in line for an absolutely monster game. Probably my favorite of all the high-priced wide receivers out there this week. After that, it gets a little dicier on what you want to do. We've got the Keenan Allen news as it stands on Friday at 3:30 Eastern time. I'm guessing that Keenan Allen's probably not going to play. We haven't really seen any news about him going to play. I'm just assuming he's going to be out. So that's going to give us Mike Williams at what, $6,000 on DraftKings. And it's looking like he's probably going to play because he's been, he's deemed a close contact, but he's tested negative all week long. So if you just keep testing negative, of course you're going to be able to play come Sunday in the NFL. So he looks like he's a pretty juicy play at the 6,000. There's a couple other guys for me. I like the ultra consistency, right? We're talking, this is the cash game version of the wide receiver. How do you not want to play Hunter Renfrow right now, who just consistently grinds out, 8 to 12 targets, something like that, catches everything that's thrown at him, gets you 50 to 100 plus yards, and is now a red zone threat all of a sudden. Who knew little what's he holding in that picture? I forgot what it is, but who knew this
Brussels sprouts or grapes or something?
Yeah, who knew Hunter Renfrow was going to be the key to winning all your best ball tournaments and doing great in DFS cash games to close out the season. But he's looking pretty good. We've got the Chargers cheap wide receivers between Guyton and Palmer. I'd probably lean Guyton. Maybe you have a stronger take on one of the two here. What do you think of those? Basically, those are the guys I'm really looking at, honestly.
I don't want Guyton or Palmer if one of Williams or Keenan is back in it, because I think we could just easily see Herbert concentrate the targets to Williams, like Jared Cook and Austin Eckler. We saw KJ Osborne get that long touchdown last night, but I don't want to say, oh, he take away a long touchdown and what did he do? But we can't be as confident with backup receivers coming in and inheriting target shares we can with like a backup running back coming in. Even sometimes with that, man, we see random guys come and complicate matters. So I don't think that like we need to go full down to the 3K range in cash, given all the value that, you've talked about a lot of it in that 5 and 6K range. Sounds like Debo's in, so I'm not going to be on Ayuk and cash, but we also got Russell Gage, similar to Renfrow, just eating up targets more weeks than not. Julio Jones practicing full on Friday. He'll be back against the Jaguars. I think he's like, 5,400. That's just too low for a number one, particularly someone like Julio. Renfrow, 4 top 12 finishes in 5 weeks since Henry Ruggs is out of the picture. And if you really want to go a little bit cheaper, I'm pretty confident in Cole Beasley at 5K. Tampa already makes opponents, because of how stout their front seven is, pass at a league high rate in non-garbage time situations. The Bills love to pass as it is. They have the 4th highest pass play rate in non-garbage time situations. And if you look at the way Tampa Bay plays defense, they run the 2nd most highest combined just amount of plays of cover 2, cover 4, cover 6, zone coverages that have 2 high safeties sitting back there. Against those coverages this year, like Beasley has even been ahead of Diggs in terms of targets, receptions, yards. So he really is Josh Allen's zone beater in a game that we're expecting him to throw the ball a lot. So I know the sexy thing is to get guys like, DK Metcalf, Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett, and they could, score 50-yard touchdown any given play. But, on a full PPR site like DraftKings, man, those 8 to 10 reception games sure add up fast. And I think that is in Beasley's potential range of outcomes this week.
Let's see. I'm just trying to think I think one of Guyton or Palmer is going to be extremely popular. I think we actually had Guyton as the highest owned wide receiver of the week this week.
Fade him. So, don't even touch him. I'm not going to have a single lineup with Guyton in it.
All right. So if you're not using him, do you have any swerves on the cheap? Because I was looking at, I was looking and I sort of need like that cheap wide receiver, even in cash, to sort of get all the guys that I want. So I was looking at Guyton. What are some swerves? Maybe, I don't know. We'll have to see where the ownership comes out. But what about in tournaments? You got anything on the cheap end?
And by the way, I guess, all right, if the projected ownership for Guyton is high enough. I guess we can just sacrifice that spot in cash to build up. So from that perspective, okay, but I just don't trust these backups. I think Brashad Perryman's a swerve in tournaments. He is at the low stone cold 3K himself. He played like 86% of the snaps last week and got the vote of confidence from Bruce Arians saying he's been practicing well and they like his explosive qualities. And with, Tyler Johnson and Scotty Miller just playing behind the guy, Perryman is Brady's number 3 receiver right now. And, not every single ball can go to Chris Godwin. So I think Perryman, he has that, one hitter quitter, big play potential against the Bills defense that without Tre'Davious White, I don't think that secondary is quite as scary as we're used to seeing. So Perryman, if you want to go dirt cheap, I mentioned before, man, CeeDee Lamb with that, newfound slot role. I think he's a great pivot off Chris Godwin, similar price range. And again, expecting the Cowboys to throw the ball a lot more with their running back situation, all sorts of banged up. I'm comfortable with Beasley in cash and tournaments alike. And final 2 points. DK Metcalf, he hasn't been practicing this week, but I think that's from the illness because they've been managing that foot injury all year long with him. That's why he's had these Thursday DMPs even before he had the illness. So you look at Houston, man, this is the league's single worst defense in defending the deep ball. How long can someone as good as DK Metcalf go without a true blow up game? I like him in tournaments. And then finally, Terry McLaurin, man, he has 4 top 10 finishes this year and 7 outside the top 40. So first or last, man, that's the game we're playing in these tournaments as it is. And I think he's facing a Cowboys secondary that, Trayvon Diggs, 9 picks, whatever he's at right now. I love it. Go create your turnovers, but look back at their matchup last year. Terry scored a 50-yard touchdown, even did the cradle celebration in the end zone after. So Terry, truly, I think one of the best all-around receivers in the game. And, he always has that sky-high potential. So if we're able to leverage off of a chalky Antonio Gibson, and also at that price point, I believe McLaurin, he's right next to Chris Godwin as well. I think it's a double situation in tournaments to get off of some chalky guys that, I see why people are on Godwin and Gibson, but let's face it, it doesn't always go the way we expect it to.
Yeah, targets are earned in the NFL. So the one I'm looking at is the Jaguars' number 1 wide receiver, Laquan Treadwell, who has, get this, 13 targets over his past 2 games. Absolutely unbelievable off the scrap heap. That is the state of affairs in Jacksonville. He's my cheap swerve off of a couple of these Chargers wide receivers in tournaments. Use at your own risk, however, because you just never really know what's happening in Jaguar land. They lose Dan Arnold, they lose Swagnew, they lose DJ Chark. It's Laquan Treadwell season apparently in Jacksonville. No wonder why Trevor Lawrence might be struggling just a little bit this year.
Laviska Shenault just a few more injuries away
from being a true number 1 wide receiver. And then I got Mike Evans is my swerve off of if Godwin's good. We don't actually have Godwin projected as high ownership. I think that might change as the week progresses. Keep your eye on that. But if Godwin does bounce up to one of the top 3 or 4 wide receivers, just go to Mike Evans. This is the ultimate sort of leverage play in the same game, or Gronkowski, who we'll talk about in just a little bit. And I mentioned at quarterback, I love Russ Wilson. That means I'm going to love one of Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf in a tournament lineup. No need to use both of them. Very rarely does they both have a big game. It's usually just one or the other. So feel free to pick and choose between those 2. All right. Before I get to tight end, I want to remind you guys that aren't RotoGrinders premium members that you should become RotoGrinders premium members. If you want access to things like ownership, our ownership expert, Chris Jamino, he just banked 100K in NBA at some point last week. So congrats to him. He is the czar of the NFL ownership projections. If you want to get his advice on who's going to be owned, who's not going to be, you can get that on RotoGrinders Premium, along with a bajillion other things that are included with RotoGrinders. If you just want NFL, you can just pay for NFL. If you want access to everything like NBA and all the tools on the site, you can basically buy everything all in one bundle. But make sure to check that out if you were ever interested in upgrading your DFS game. All right, let's get to tight end. Last week we did the Foster Moreau. The thesis, Ian, was Darren Waller out, Foster Moreau plays all the snaps. That's what happened last time. That did not happen this time. Moreau has gone up to $4,000. Probably not really looking at him this week. There are a couple of other players on the cheap side we can look at. We've got Jared Cook with what we're assuming is going to be Keenan Allen out. I think he's going to be the de facto slot wide receiver in this offense. He basically sort of is anyway. And I think he's not Keenan Allen, but he will sort of take over some of those Keenan Allen type roles and see an uptick in snaps. And we've got Austin Hooper, who basically by no fault of his own is the only man standing left in the tight end room for one of the most tight end heavy pass offenses in the league. Will it remain that way when they're without David Njoku and Harrison Bryant? That is to be seen, but he should be out there for basically every snap for the Browns this week. What cheap wide receiver would you rather put your money on? Or tight end, I mean.
Yeah, I want Hooper over Cook because you're right. Cook has spent 65% of the snaps in the slot or out wide this year. But we can go back to that, weird game the Browns had against the Jets where like their entire wide receiver room got COVID last year. And we saw Baker feed Hooper 15 targets. Now, I know it's a different situation, but like that has been the problem with Hooper over these past few years. Like he is one of the highest paid tight ends in the entire league. But when he's splitting everything with Bryant, with Njoku, who are both talented in their own right, it's been tough for him to produce. But I believe the number in this, Browns offense, like a 30% target share to their tight ends, which is one of the highest marks in the entire league, if not the highest. Well, it's now all going to Hooper. That's the game we're going to play. So I think, again, it's tough to always assume where target share is going to go when we're talking about guys at different positions. So if the situation was reversed and the Browns receivers were hurt and we were looking at like Hooper should have a bigger role now amongst the other tight ends, that's what we're trying to do with Jared Cook right now. And I don't think that's a given. Maybe he'll be used more as the de facto number 3 receiver. Maybe they continue to rotate him with both Donald Parham and Steven Anderson, who's out there more snaps than he probably should be during any given week. So I think Jared Cook also, he's made a couple okay catches this year, but really hasn't been impressive, I think, athletically. He's like 35 years old at this point. So I want Austin Hooper here. I think he's going to be on the field each and every snap with a quarterback that loves to feed his tight ends against a Ravens secondary that remains all sorts of banged up.
Yeah, if you are spending up, I think the one guy I like the most, this might be a little different than most people, is Gronkowski, who's $6,000 in his full games this year. He's gotten at least 8 targets in all of them but one. And what other tight end has 8 targets with multiple touchdown upside basically every single game? They're not going to try to run against the Bills, I don't think. This is going to be the Tom Brady passing at home where he's basically had all of his good games all season long. So I like Gronk 6,000. It's just hard to spend that on cash. But if you are looking for tournaments, Gronkowski would be one of the first guys I would fire in there, and along with sort of like Mark Andrews. The high end in tournaments is just really going to get you a different lineup this week because we don't have all the value elsewhere. But would it surprise me? So Kittle, I'm probably off with Debo back, although Debo's going to maybe be like a de facto running back. So Kittle might have some more pass work, especially after his big game. Kelsey just absolutely obliterates the Raiders every time he plays him. He's an absolutely great play, in my opinion. I like Gronk. Andrews is a target hog. I'm not on Kyle Pitts. I'm not really on this 4 to 5,500 range. I'm basically not on any of those guys. I like spending up, or I sort of like the low price guys we talked about here.
We also did just get news that Darren Waller, who hadn't practiced all week, but he is officially ruled out. And I think you kind of briefly mentioned it when we were going over the manifesto stuff, but yeah, the Foster Moreau bounce back potential, I think, makes a lot of sense here. He has that same every down role that we were hoping for. It just, didn't come to fruition last week. So Renfro can't catch every ball in that offense. We know Brian Edwards, AKA TO, AKA Moss, isn't really getting fed given, basically all season. So I think going back to Moreau in tournaments makes some sense. But yeah, otherwise, little off. It's just so tough with Kittle, man, because he's such a good blocker. I feel like when they have Ayuk and Debo healthy, they're not going to feed him the sort of target share we saw last week. So I'm fine just getting up to Gronk, man, because once he has come back, you have seen this offense just really not force feed on the ball, but he's like right there with Godwin and Evans as a top 3 option. His yards per route run are back like to 2017 levels. He looks good out there. And don't look now, Britt, he's averaging more fantasy points per game than Travis Kelce, who costs 1.4K more. So if you wanted to even go with a Hooper and a Gronk or a Hooper and a Mark Andrews, I'm not against kind of doing that double tight end, roster construction, because they're really, we talked about Perryman and Guyton and, Treadwell and some of these other 3K receivers. Like, I feel better about Hooper than pretty much all those guys that can get you some of the salary relief. And with Gronk and Andrews and, even Kittle or Kelsey, if you wanted to go there, you're getting guys that can be their passing games de facto number one option. Those four guys, actually, I just listed Kelsey, Gronk, Andrews, and oh my gosh, Kittle. Yeah. If you just look at wide receivers and tight ends, combine them, like they're all top 24 fantasy producers, even when you include the receivers. So like, they aren't just high scoring tight ends, they're high scoring receivers. So like, if you want to look at players that are that talented as receivers, then I think the double tight end construction can pay off sometimes.
I want to compliment you on your LaVisca Chenault tweet that you sent out during the show. That was a great one. All right, let's wrap this up.
I just tweet what I'm thinking, Brett. It all flows.
Let's wrap this up. I'll have you throw a couple of defenses. I haven't really looked at defenses too much this week. Are we going cheap? Are we going mid-tier? What's the lay of the land look like?
I think I would really prefer to get up to the Browns at 2,700. And I've been able to do that in most of my roster constructions early, because as much as I could see Lamar bouncing back, that's why he's one of my tournament picks. Like, he's the type of quarterback, him, Russ, Deshaun Watson over the years, like we've talked about these guys, they can have big games, but the way they play, the way they run around the backfield, it still lends themselves to taking a bunch of sacks. And you can live with that if you're those offenses, because, think about it. Like, when they're running around in the backfield and stuff, like, what's a pocket quarterback doing? What's Jimmy Garoppolo doing when he gets that pressure? Like, he's either taking the sack to begin with, or he's like now forced to throw the ball to a bad situation because he can't scramble to save his life. So sometimes I think they get unfair flack on that, but regardless, those are the types of, still very good quarterbacks that we can feel comfortable playing defenses against, because, those sacks and turnovers potential that can even outweigh a potential big game. So we prefer to get up in the Browns and cash. Also, don't sleep on, though, just in tournaments, some guys we haven't talked about that I think do correlate with their defenses potentially in winnable matchups. Nick Chubb and that Browns defense going up against the Ravens. Maybe Lamar doesn't get back on track and we continue to see him have all sorts of turnovers. Chuba Hubbard and that Panthers defense going up against Matt Ryan, the Falcons. We've seen that Falcons floor all year long. Panthers, one of the more blitz happy, pressure heavy defenses in the league. And also Devontae Freeman and that Ravens D against the Browns. Maybe they don't get back on track. So, I took that Browns Ravens under. I don't hate going with those running backs and defenses on either sideline, I should say.
For those of you that aren't RotoGrinders premium members, I'll just give you a little look at defense here real quick. It looks like the Seahawks, the Panthers, and the Browns look with Davis Mills back at quarterback. I am thoroughly on that Seahawks bandwagon at 3,100, even though their defense is horrible. I think we can get behind them. And then the Panthers at home against Atlanta. I think you just mentioned them. I think they're fine. The Browns coming in third. I can get behind just about any of those. And none of them are really top tier, bust tier salary type of plays on DraftKings. So I think all those should be in range. All right, that's going to do it, Ian, for the week 14 edition of the Pro Football Focus Show. I'm going to go eat some Mickey ice cream bars and have myself a good night down here for the rest of my vacation. Ian, it's been 85 and sunny here all week. Probably not nicest weather for you up there in PFF land. But I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my day. I'll see you and everyone else here next week. For Ian, I'm Brit. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we out.